So while people are trickling in, I'll quickly introduce myself. So my name is Snigdha Rao. I'm a second-year MBA here at Yale SOM. Thank you for joining me today for this virtual campus tour of the Yale School of Management. Really excited to have a couple minutes to speak with you all today. Before I kick off the tour, I do want to give a quick background on myself so you all know where I'm from and what I'm doing here. So I am originally from Smithsburg, Maryland, in the United States. Before SOM, I worked in management consulting at Deloitte Consulting in their strategy and operations practice for 4.5 years. I mainly focused in the healthcare space, so I worked with healthcare providers and life sciences companies, as well as supply chain management firms. During the summer, I actually interned at the National Park Service with the federal government. So I did something pretty different, kind of pivoted a little bit, but wanted to explore what other options there were out there. And I had a fantastic summer there, learned a lot, and was really able to apply a lot of the things I've learned at SOM in my internship too. At SOM, I'm involved in student government. So I'm one of the co-vice presidents of student government. I'm also the admissions chair. And then I'm also involved in Women in Management Club, which we can talk about a little bit later, but I'm the community committee chair lead there. So we really try to build a community here at SOM and get people together, which is now more important than ever. So excited to talk to you all about that. So we have quite a few people logged in. I see that you've all filled out the polls. We have people from North America, South America, Asia, even Europe. So thanks for joining. I know it's probably a random time for you all. And it looks like people are kind of in all parts of their application process too. So we have a couple people who already applied in round 1, a couple people round 2 or round 3, and then a couple people also thinking about applying in future application cycles. So thanks all for joining, and hopefully this provides you with some more information to help you with your application. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the polling for now. Perfect, so we can get started. All right, so the picture that you see here is Yale SOM, Yale School of Management. If it weren't for the global health crisis, obviously we would potentially, some of you would be in person. A lot of the times though, prospective students may not have time to come to Yale SOM, or they might be traveling from far away. So we have had virtual tours in the past too. So even though we all prefer an in-person tour, I think this virtual tour will be just as good, and it kind of offers more people to dial in, which is always awesome. Before we start off, I do want to quickly caveat that all of the pictures and photographs that you see here today were taken before the pandemic. So, you know, you'll see people kind of in close quarters without masks on. And so just wanted to quickly state that this was all done before the pandemic as well. And then at the end of this tour, as we're going through, I'll kind of start off walking through the first floor, then we'll do the second floor, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the SOM experience. And towards the end of this session, I will happily take any questions as well. So feel free to put that into the chat and we'll circle back later. Great. All right, so this is another close-up of Yale SOM. So when you come to New Haven, the School of Management is really hard to miss. So for those of you who are familiar, Yale University has pretty Gothic architecture, a lot of historical buildings. So the School of Management you'll see is glass, it's modern, it's just like very striking when you're walking through Yale. One of my favorite things about the building is the glass. So the glass facade actually has a deeper meaning. It kind of represents the Yale SOM mission and how we believe that business and management should be really transparent and collaborative. So when you're walking through these hallways, you can see people on the other side of the building because everything's glass, and it just forms this really awesome collaborative, like interactive culture in the building, which is awesome. So I think the architecture of the building really adds to the community aspect of SOM too, which is pretty awesome. So this building actually opened in 2014, though the School of Management has been around before then. And it was actually designed by a Yale School of Architecture alum, which was pretty cool. And inside the building is where we have most of our classes. So if you're taking elective courses, obviously that'll be outside of the building, but all SOM courses are within this building. So you'll spend a lot of time here. And I'll talk you through some of the other kind of amenities we have in the building, including the cafe, lunch spots, technology, as well as some of the libraries and other study spaces we have here. So I want to quickly draw your attention to this little blue box. I'm not sure if you guys can see my cursor, but wanted to kind of call out, this is the most photographed spot, I would say. A lot of people, when they visit Yale SOM or when they graduate, will take pictures by the School of Management sign, and it's just like a really fun photo opportunity. So if you ever find yourself in New Haven visiting, definitely recommend taking a picture there. So here's a picture of a hallway in Evans. This is kind of a typical kind of hallway and people kind of walking through to go to class. So now that we're inside the building, what I'll do is I'll take you around the first floor. So Evans Hall is a square, essentially, and in the middle of that square, there's a big green courtyard. So I'll walk you through the first floor, show you some of the different rooms and spaces we have on the first floor, then we'll head up to the second floor so we can see some of the classrooms and other items there. All right, so this is a couple pictures of Evans Cafe. So you'll see here, these are just kind of three different images, but this is really the area where we all get coffee while we're going to lunch or snacks. It's also just a great place to sit down and catch up with friends. I know when in my first year, I met a lot of second years here for, I'd ask them about their internship or their kind of goals and objectives at business school. And it was just like a very central place to catch up, grab coffee, sit down between classes to get a quick bite to eat. And it's just a very popular kind of spot in the building as people are coming in and out. So it's a really fun area too. So that's on the first floor as well. So as we're heading around the first floor, we'll see Evans Cafe, which I just showed you. And now we're kind of looking at Charlie's Place, which is the lunch kind of food area. So Charlie's is where a lot of people will get lunch between classes. They have a rotating menu every week. The staff is super friendly and personable, and it's just really great to see people on a daily basis. Charlie's Place also has a ton of spots to sit and eat. So usually people will grab food and then they'll sit down at a booth or a table in Charlie's Place to catch up with friends. A lot of people do homework during lunchtime, and it's just a really nice place to kind of collaborate and meet up with people too. A lot of people also, if they're not getting lunch at Charlie's, they'll go down to the food trucks. So the food trucks are actually outside of Evans Hall, but there's a ton of them where people can get Mexican food, Thai food, Indian food, sushi, and so a lot of people will sometimes walk down to the food trucks, grab a bite to eat, and then come back to work on projects. So this is a picture of the outside of Evans. So as I mentioned before, Evans is kind of a square with a green courtyard in the middle, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. But when the weather's nice, especially right now, my favorite time of year is New England fall, and it's absolutely gorgeous outside. So it's just a wonderful place to kind of get some sunlight. You can still eat outside. A lot of people will do group projects outside too. So this is just a really fun space to be as well. So speaking of the courtyard, wanted to show you all a couple pictures of what happens in the courtyard. There are a ton of activities. So these are a lot of pictures, but you'll see that there's club fairs. We usually have an orientation event or two here. We also have graduation here. So you'll see in this bottom left-hand corner, all of the graduates kind of sitting, and there's a kind of a stage set up for people to walk to get their diploma. So it's a really fun space. We have closing bells as well. For some of you might know that every Thursday nights we have closing bell where we all get together for beers and snacks and drinks. And when the weather's nice outside, we'll usually do it in the courtyard, which is always a ton of fun too. So now we're heading back inside to Evans. Wanted to show you all another common area, which is the student lounge. So these are all pictures of the student lounge. The student lounge is another central spot. This is really where you will see we have a kitchen in the top right hand corner. You can see there's a kitchen there. There's like a communal fridge, a microwave, tea and coffee. So this is where a lot of people will also just quickly drop in to like pick up their lunch. If they packed a lunch, it's usually in this fridge. So they'll go get that. You'll see on the left-hand side, a lot of people are doing work here as well. It's just a nice place to collaborate too. And then on the bottom right corner, that's kind of a quiet space. So sometimes they have meditations. Clubs will host meditation sessions there. I have actually used that space to take a quick nap between classes because it's just really quiet. And you can get some space, you can get away from some of the hustle and bustle that's happening around Evans. So it's just a nice place to take a nap and just get some rest outside of the classroom. So as we're continuing our way through the first floor, we're still on the first floor. This is a picture of Zhang Auditorium. So Zhang Auditorium is the largest space in Evans Hall. It seats about 350 people, which is actually really helpful for us because our incoming class is usually 350 people. So all of us can fit in this room during orientation. But you'll see here that we also host other external events like the Yale Climate Conference. We have orientation here, welcome weekend here. We'll also have a lot of Yale University, wider Yale University events here where we'll bring in external speakers or alumni, government officials. Actually, in this picture, if you look really closely, you can see John Kerry on the left-hand side, who is moderating this panel here for the Yale Climate Conference. So we'll have a lot of really distinguished guests and alumni come, and it's just a really wonderful auditorium as well. And the last thing I'll point out is just that because we have larger Yale University events, it's another way to collaborate with the larger Yale University and kind of integrates SOM into the greater university as well, which I think is a recurring theme of SOM and Yale in general. So now we've kind of walked through the first floor. So I've shown you the cafe, Charlie's Place. We've talked about Zhang, we've explored the courtyard, I've shown you the student lounge. So now we're gonna head up to the second floor, which is really where all of the classrooms and things are. But before that, wanted to quickly pause and show you some swag, which I think is just a really fun part of business school. So these are all swag, this is all swag from career and recruiting events. So the CDO, or the Career Development Office, is really the main office that's responsible for facilitating a lot of the job opportunities and internship opportunities that students will have. The CDO also hosts career coaching appointments too. So if you're a first year trying to figure out what you want to do, I know I did this. I set up an appointment with the Career Development Office to kind of talk through my goals and my objectives for business school and where I wanted to be for my internship. So that it's a really helpful office for all of that. But wanted to show you a picture of all of the different swag that we get just going to recruiting events: water bottles, t-shirts. Graduate students can never say no to free stuff. So definitely a huge fan of all of the swag. All right, so now we're heading up to the second floor. So you'll see here, it's a little bit different than the first floor I showed you. The stairs that you can kind of see there in the picture are kind of all over the building. So you can get access to the second floor from really wherever you are on the first floor. The second floor and the fourth floor are where most of the classrooms are. So you'll see the first floor has a lot of those like common spaces. The second floor and the fourth floor have all of the classrooms. And then the third floor has most of the administrative offices, like faculty offices as well. The second floor also contains the Academic Affairs and Student Life office, which is also called AASL. So AASL is really the main student kind of facing organization at SOM, and they kind of help us with classes, TA support, tutoring support, and also all of the student life stuff. So events, I mentioned like closing bell, just like formal, all of those fun events all happen through AASL. So now we're on the second floor that I wanted to show you some of the classrooms that we have here. So the classrooms are designed very intentionally, just like the building. When I was talking about the glass facade, I think that same kind of view about collaboration and community building really kind of flows into the classroom design as well. So you'll see the classroom in the bottom left with kind of the U-shaped structure. that's a classroom that's typically used for core classes. So core classes are the classes that you take your first year at SOM. So all students will be split up into 5 different cohorts. The cohorts are gold, green, red, silver, and blue. I'm personally in the red cohort. I'm a huge fan of my cohort. You take classes with your cohort your entire first year, and that's a cohort that's usually made up of like 60 to 70 students. So it's a really nice way to get to know a smaller subsection of your class throughout the year and kind of get closer to that smaller group. So you'll take classes with your cohort your first year, and that's really what that classroom setup is really beneficial for. The other classrooms that you see here on the top and the bottom right, these are mostly used for elective courses, which usually have a smaller number of students. And you can usually start to take electives your spring semester first year and then definitely your second year. So for example, right now I'm taking all elective courses because I finished the core courses my first year. All classrooms also have the latest and greatest technology, which is very much needed, especially now. But you'll see we have projectors everywhere. A lot of the classrooms have drop-down mics or just open mics, and then mics in the classroom as well to speak. So it's been really nice, especially now that we're in the hybrid format, we can kind of project half of our classmates on the screen and then half of the classmates are sitting in the classroom, which is really nice to do. So now as we're kind of diving into the classroom, really quickly wanted to point out this kind of close up. You'll see that all students have a name tag, which kind of goes right in front of your seat. And it's just a really good way for professors to know your name. Cold calling is pretty frequent at business schools. So when professors know your name, they're more easily able to call you, and name tags are required, and you usually get them during orientation. So it's just a nice kind of thing to have here. All right, so continuing our journey through the second floor, this is our library. So this is called Ross Library. It's on the second floor. It's just a very quiet place. So usually when you're walking around the hallways at SOM, there's a lot of hustle and bustle as people are going to class or club meetings. But the Ross Library is a nice, secluded, quiet space to do work. They also have printers there and some desktop computers if you need to print a case for class. I usually just pop in really quick, print a case, and then pop back out. It's just in a convenient spot. So a lot of students will do work here. And again, you'll see this kind of glass facade that repeats throughout the building, but it's a really nice view. You actually can see the Peabody Museum across the street, which is pretty cool. The one thing I do want to point out here, everyone kind of asks this question during tours, is where are the books? There are no books in Ross Library, which is kind of ironic, but most of the books are hosted at Yale University, some of the Yale University libraries in campus, but you can request any book that you want in the library, and you can kind of get that copy to you. We also have an SOM librarian who's usually there, so you can always ask for any advice or books or research that you need help with. So here, we're still on the second floor. This is a breakout room. This is a typical breakout room. So I showed you a couple of the classrooms that we have, and the breakout rooms are kind of interspersed on the outer edges of Evans Hall. So the classrooms are kind of in the middle, and then the breakout rooms are on the outside. And the breakout rooms are really where most of us do all of our group projects. Any club meetings that we have, smaller club meetings, will be in breakout rooms. You can also reserve a breakout room for yourself and your learning team if you just want to do some studying in a quiet spot. All of the breakout rooms have dry erase boards, and as well as a TV screen, which you can kind of see on the left-hand side there. So it's just a really nice technology-enabled room for you to do work. And the learning team that I mentioned is actually a smaller subset of your cohort. So you're going to be placed into a cohort of about 65 to 70 students. And then within your cohort, you're assigned to a learning team of about 8 to 9 students. And that's really the team that you do most of your homework and group projects with your first year. So you get pretty close. I am still really good friends with all of my learning team members, and we did a lot of work together in breakout rooms, especially late into the night. So it's really nice to have the space here to kind of work together. All right, so now wanted to get to some of the fun stuff. These are a ton of different pictures, but wanted to show you all of the fun events that we have going on on campus. So we usually have an IF auction, which is the Internship Fund auction. The Internship Fund is a huge part of SOM. it's a student-run fund that raises money for students who are doing internships in the nonprofit or public sector space. So we usually have a nice fancy auction for that. That's on the left-hand side here. You'll see the hockey team is playing on the right-hand side. The hockey team is a huge part of SOM. A lot of my friends played last year and they loved it. And then on the bottom right, you'll see that's our annual Friendsgiving dinner during the American holiday of Thanksgiving, where the academic affairs and student life team will just put together this huge meal for us. We have turkey and cranberry sauce and stuffing, and it's just like a really wonderful dinner that we get to have with the larger SOM community. So lots of fun things going on at SOM. So as we're transitioning out of SOM into the greater Yale University, because that's, you know, we can't talk about SOM without talking about Yale University as a whole. We really do have a one Yale kind of approach here. The pictures that you see here are parts of Yale campus. So the one on the left is one of my favorites. This is a Sterling Memorial Library, which I think is a really iconic landmark of Yale when people talk about Yale. It's a gorgeous library inside. I know a couple people study there. It's a little bit farther from SOM, but it's just a really nice study spot. As a second year, a lot of students will take electives at other graduate schools. So you'll notice that you might be spending a little bit more time outside of SOM, taking graduate classes at the School of Public Health or the law school, for example. And so you'll be walking through this part of campus to take classes there. We actually have a ton of joint degrees too. I mentioned the School of Public Health is one of our most popular, but we also have a lot of JD MBAs, MD MBAs, as well as the School of Environment and the Jackson Institute. So lots of different joint degrees, and that kind of contributes to the overall integration with the greater university, which is really a core tenet of our Yale SOM mission and strategy. So this is a picture of the Sci City, which is the Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale. This is really our kind of entrepreneurial hub. So there's a lot of activities happening in this space, like conferences, boot camps, pitch competitions. And this is kind of at the Yale University level. At SOM, we also have an entrepreneurial space. It's called the Honesty Entrepreneurship Suite, which is actually in the bottom level of SOM. I didn't talk about that today, but really quickly wanted to highlight we do have an entrepreneurship space at SOM. And then this picture that you see here is the Sci Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale, which is at the larger Yale University level. I've actually taken a couple workshops at Sci City, even though I'm not an entrepreneur. They've offered like an improv workshop and just really cool events that anyone at Yale can participate in. So as we're moving outside of Yale University, we're kind of getting to a larger and larger scale here, but this is New Haven, and you're going to be in New Haven if you come to SOM, and New Haven is a wonderful city. I love it. It's small, but it's just filled with so much like vibrant art and theater and shops and culture too. So these are just a ton of pictures of different spots in New Haven. It's like, you'll see kind of downtown, you'll see some of the shops here that we have. The bottom right picture, I think, is a farmer's market that happens at Wooster Square on Saturdays. I love New Haven because there's just so much, there's so many different artistic kind of activities you can do. So I've gone to the Schubert Theater for a couple of plays, which has been awesome. And that's right downtown, like 10 minutes from my apartment. I've gone to the farmer's markets, gone shopping as well. Yale also has, or New Haven actually also has a ton of art galleries too, affiliated with Yale, like the British Art Gallery or the Greater Yale Art Gallery too. So lots of things to do outside of even the campus. And then lastly, wanted to quickly touch base on some of the things that happen outside of Yale, outside of New Haven, outside of the United States. So these are a couple of pictures of some of the different trips that Yale SOM students take through global experience trips, like international experience. There's different global courses that are offered at SOM, and you do have a global studies requirement to graduate. So one of the ways students kind of fulfill that requirement is to travel abroad. And there are courses that are offered that kind of take you to all of these different places. So you'll see there's a picture of people in South Africa. I think Peru is one of them. There's just a ton of activities and places to explore and see as well. And these courses, if you're taking something like an international experience course, that usually happens during spring break in March. So it's a really nice way to kind of step away from classes, take a 2-week trip with your classmates and your professors, and then come back for your second quarter in the spring. All right, so we'll wrap up the tour. That's kind of the end of the tour here, but wanted to wrap up with a quick image. This is the second floor again, but wanted to show you what it typically looks like when people are kind of walking to class. As you can see, there's a lot of hustle and bustle going around as people are going to all different sorts of places, but happy to open it up to questions at this time. So I did get a couple questions on the Q&A. So one question that I got was, outside of campus, what activities do people engage in, and how do students interact with the New Haven community? So this is a great question. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but as I mentioned, New Haven has a ton of activities going on. I personally have gone to the art galleries. There's a Schubert Theater is really close by, and they have a lot of great plays there. I actually saw Rent there last year, which was awesome. Yale Drama School also has a lot of performances, as well as the Yale Repertory Theater, the Yale Cabaret, lots of performances there. In terms of Greater New Haven, so the Schubert Theater is one, the art galleries are a couple other things. There's also just events that go on in New Haven. The New Haven Green is pretty central, and they'll have farmers markets or kind of fun arts fairs. There's Restaurant Week happening. I think that happened a couple weeks ago, which was really cool because New Haven has a ton of great restaurants, and there's always new restaurants opening up. So it's kind of fun to explore that vibe as well. And that's always something I enjoy doing with friends, especially now. A lot of restaurants have opened up outdoor seating. And so there's a couple roads in New Haven that have kind of been blocked off and only pedestrians can walk through. So that's been a really fun way to explore the city as well. Hopefully that answers your question. The next question I got is, why did you choose Yale SOM? Great question. So Yale SOM, I chose because of the community. I love the culture and the community that I found here, and especially when I was visiting different business schools, it's kind of easy to tell, once you're at the school or even when you're listening to webinars or campus tours, you can kind of get a sense of what the school prioritizes, what kinds of students go to those schools, and what the general culture is of the community there. And for me, the SOM community and culture stood out immediately as something that I really related to and I really enjoyed. I think all the students here care about things that are much, much larger than themselves. It's not just about, finding your perfect job and, contributing in that way, but also thinking about, in whatever job you have, how are you contributing to society? How are you making a positive impact in your community, whether that's a local impact or a state impact or a national impact? What are you doing outside of yourself to benefit others? And I think that ethos runs very strongly in this group. And I've noticed that in every single one of my classmates, whether they're working in investment banking or nonprofit education spaces, everyone cares about the impact they're making on others and the society. So are you taking any classes at other Yale graduate schools? So at the moment, I am not. I'm actually only taking electives at SOM, but that's just because I found a lot of classes that I liked at SOM this semester. And so my priority is next semester, I'm gonna try to take classes at other graduate schools. But this semester, I'm taking electives at SOM, and most of the electives are very kind of, I would say, softer skill electives, at least for me. So I'm taking a class called Capitalism in America, where we're kind of exploring how capitalism started and what implications that has for a business management leader. I'm also taking a course called Urban Poverty and Economic Development. I'm taking a course called Strategic Management of Nonprofit Organizations. So those are all SOM electives, which is pretty cool. So you'll see that there's kind of a wide variety, even at SOM, when taking electives. All right. Great questions, everyone. These are really, really good questions. The next question that I have here is, where do Yale SOM students typically live, and is there graduate housing? So Yale SOM students typically live in two different areas. So the first is East Rock, which is a neighborhood that's kind of north of SOM, and East Rock really has a lot of the older colonial homes that will have apartments kind of split up and multiple students will live there. And it's just a really nice neighborhood vibe. There's lots of trees, lots of walking around. You're also really close to East Rock Park, which is a really popular park for SOM students, as well as other graduate students. So East Rock, I would say about 60% of people live in East Rock, and then the other 40%, I would say, live in downtown New Haven. So I personally live in downtown New Haven. The downtown New Haven living situation is a lot more apartments and high-rise buildings. So you'll see that it kind of differs between, if you want to live in an apartment or maybe a high-rise, downtown might be the place for you, versus if you want to kind of live in a house and have other roommates too, East Rock might be a better situation. And then for graduate housing, there is some graduate housing, but it's somewhat limited, I would say. So you do have to submit an application to live in graduate housing, and it is fairly close to SOM. I do have a couple friends that live in graduate housing. I think it's just a different experience because you are kind of living in a dorm, not a dorm style, but apartment style setup, and you might be rooming with non-SOM graduate students, which could be a nice way to meet other people from across the university too. But my friends that live there have enjoyed it as well. So lots of options for living situations. All right, so how do students choose their global courses and travel, and has this been impacted by COVID? Yeah, so global courses and travel, we typically have a bidding system at SOM. So when you're a second year and even your first year, you actually bid on different courses. So we're allocated a certain number of points, and we can use those points to bid on certain classes. So it's a system that's set up so we can kind of match demand and supply pretty well. So the way that I did it is I bid on a course for March 2020, which was an international experience trip to Rwanda and Kenya. And so I took a course in the spring semester with the professor that was leading this trip. And then during spring break, the plan was to go to Rwanda and Kenya and put our learnings into practice there. Obviously, that didn't happen this year because of COVID. The pandemic happened, I think, the week before I was supposed to go to Rwanda. And so I didn't get to go then, but I think this year too, it's kind of unlikely that we'll actually get to travel there, but there are still global studies opportunities. So we do have an option for what we call global network weeks, which are the global network is essentially like a group of 20 or so business schools across the world that offer courses for students to kind of have interchangeable courses. So for example, I can take a class at the London Business School for a week virtually. So that's another way that students are getting in some of their global studies requirements. And so that doesn't necessarily require travel, but you can still kind of take classes at schools across the globe. All right, next question. How accessible are nearby cities? So so New Haven is definitely a smaller city, but New York is very accessible, I would say. I've been there a couple times. I went on a day trip once just to see a play on Broadway. So it's definitely possible. The Metro North train, we have a train station in New Haven. The Metro North comes through there. So you can just hop on the train. It's a 2-hour train ride to New York City. And it's pretty easy. I know a lot of students last year used to go there for recruiting events. If you were recruiting for banking, you just hop on the train, go to New York, and then come back to New Haven. So definitely easy to do. I will say, Boston is also accessible. I traveled to Boston a couple times on the train, on the Amtrak, and that's also, I want to say, about 2.5 hours away. So I think New York and Boston are pretty accessible. It is really nice to have the train station here because you can kind of get to most cities. I've also gone to DC a couple times using the Amtrak. So yeah, definitely accessible to do. And I think obviously if you have a car, it's even more accessible. How are you staying engaged with the SOM community and your clubs in the hybrid environment? Great question. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a challenge, as I'm sure you all can expect, but a lot of us have been, I have a lot of creative classmates, so we've been finding ways to kind of meet up in smaller groups. Everyone's been doing a really fantastic job of following all the rules and protocol, not only of Connecticut State, but also of Yale University and SOM. So all of us we hang out in very small groups, so try to do groups of 10 or less. All of us are wearing masks. We're trying to meet outside as much as possible. So I think there are still ways to kind of foster that community aspect. I know I've taken a lot of individual walks with my friends and peers, so it'll be a lot of, hey, let's go on a walk, and we'll just go on a socially distant walk and catch up. It's actually been kind of nice because I feel that I've gotten to form some deeper connections with people, with maybe fewer number of people, but form deeper relationships with them versus meeting, 100 people and having more surface level conversations. So I think, to look at a silver lining of all of this is I feel like I'm forming more significant relationships with my classmates, especially those I didn't know as well last year. I've gotten to kind of get to know a lot better this year, which has been really nice. Could you speak more to your learning team? Who makes up your team? Do you all share the same career interests? Great question. The answer is no, we do not share the same career interests, and it's actually done on purpose that we do not share the same career interests. So the way the learning team works is it's actually an algorithm. It's a magic algorithm, as we all say. I don't actually know how it works, but as you kind of come into the classroom and you're placed into your different cohorts, the way that SOM kind of splits you up is your cohort is meant to be kind of a miniature version of your class, and your learning team is meant to be a miniature version of your cohort. So it's very like representative of your larger, 350 person class. And so your learning team is made up of very, very different people. Everyone's coming from different backgrounds. Everyone has different career interests, and everyone has different strengths and weaknesses too. So for example, on my learning team, I was one of two consultants. I had someone who was an architect. I had a dual public health MBA student. I had someone who worked in economic consulting. I had someone who was in the Coast Guard and who's going back to the Coast Guard after school. So it's just a really diverse group, which makes it a really interesting work experience because you're forced to kind of work with people who have very different perspectives from you. But it teaches you a lot about how to manage people, manage expectations, and also just really understand, like, be empathetic and like understand what it means to think about a problem or a situation from someone else's perspective. So I've loved the learning team aspect. I think I've learned a lot from my group of 9 folks, and it's been really enriching. Next question: how do you split your time between classes, recruitment, clubs, and social life? This is the question of the moment. If I had an answer to this, I would obviously say it right away, but I don't have an answer to it. I think this is really the crux of the business school experience is, what are you coming to business school for? What are you going to prioritize? Because you can't do everything. It's just not physically possible. So one thing that I always tell incoming students is really take the time before you apply to business school and before you come to business school to think about what you're trying to get out of business school. What do you want to prioritize? Do you want to prioritize getting a job? Do you want to prioritize learning hard skills? Do you want to prioritize making a network? Think about what your priorities are and then really hone in on them. And then be okay with, dropping some of those things that are maybe not as important to you, right? Because you just can't do everything. For me, my priority was really making friends and building a network. So I focus a little bit more on some of my social life and some of my club's life, more so than academics. But my first year, I focused more on academics. So I think it also changes. Like, as a first year, your focus might be more on academics and recruiting, while your second year might be forming more of those like long-term relationships. But I think the balance is really hard, and it's always a work in progress. I think it changes for me, every month as to what I'm trying to focus on, and then just being okay with letting something slide a little bit. So we are running close to time, so I might take 1 or 2 more questions. The next question I got is, what was your favorite class in the core? Yeah, this is a great question. One of my favorite classes was a class called State and Society, which is taught in the spring semester. And it's a course that kind of ties together the business management kind of learnings that you have your first year with some of the implications for the broader world. So it's called State and Society. So you're thinking not just about business management, but also about global implications and policy implications, and the intersection between business and government as well. So that was just a really interesting class. It was taught by two professors. So it was co-taught by a political scientist named Ian Shapiro, who's fantastic, has been at Yale for a long time, and then by Mushfiq Mubarak, who is an eminent scholar in economic development work. So the both of them offered really different perspectives, which I think is a recurring theme, is just this interdisciplinary approach to education at SOM. So that was just a fantastic class for me, and I really, really enjoyed it very much. So I would recommend looking into that a bit more. Next question, how did you find your summer internship? What resources at Yale SOM assisted in this process? So I'll talk about the resources at SOM first. I mentioned during the tour the Career Development Office, or the CDO for short. So the CDO is really the office that's responsible for a lot of the facilitation of job opportunities. The CDO is the one that kind of brings the recruiters in, hosts workshops, has career coaching appointments. The CDO has relationships with a lot of the bigger employers as well as the smaller employers. So the CDO is really kind of the main resource. I also think that there's some informal resources as well, especially when it comes to the second years who have gone through that internship search process, right? So right now as a second year, I'm talking to first years almost every week, if not every day, about my internship process and kind of providing them that informal advice of like, this is what I went through. If you're interested in this, these are the paths that you can take. So I think there's both the formal approach through the Career Development Office, as well as kind of the informal approach through a lot of the second years, especially club leaders, I think help a lot with, especially consulting and banking recruiting too. So there's kind of a two-pronged approach I would take. For my summer internship, I actually, I leveraged the kind of existing resources that the CDO had. So the National Park Service is a federal agency, but they have a pretty established process here at Yale SOM where they'll come to campus every year to kind of recruit. So for me, it was a pretty straightforward process because I found the application in the system and I dropped a resume, and it was fairly straightforward. But I did talk to the second year who had done the internship the year prior too. So lots of different ways to kind of explore that. All right, last question. Share a favorite memory at SOM. I have so many favorite memories. It's just been an absolute joy. My first year and even my second year, I've just loved it so much. I love the community and people here so much. I think my favorite memory is, there's a couple, but I really loved our winter formal last year. We had this awesome kind of event put together by the Student Life Chair and the Academic Affairs and Student Life Office, where we all got dressed up and had a wonderful kind of party together. And it was towards the end of the year, so it was just a really nice celebration, and we were all in the room together. We had just gotten through fall 1 and fall 2 of our first year, which can be kind of a grind. So it was just a really nice celebration and kind of culmination of all of the hard work we had done. So, but I will say I have many, many favorite memories. It's hard to pick just one, but hopefully you'll have just as many, if not more than me, whenever you come to SOM. So I think we're at time, so I'm actually going to stop this webinar, or Melissa will help me stop it. But thank you all so much for joining. I hope this was useful. I hope this kind of gave you a sense of what Evans Hall looks like, as well as help you learn a little bit more about the SOM community. If you have more questions, I would really recommend you go to the Student Ambassadors website. On the Yale SOM website, there's a ton of students that are listed on the website, and they all have different career interests, so you can kind of filter and search for areas or industries you're interested in. So I'd highly recommend you reach out to those student ambassadors. But thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you have a great week.